Color grading for me is an incredibly important part of the creative process. It's something that I've always done in all of the videos that I've posted on this channel, and it's something that I personally really enjoy. Now, it started out with me using what's known as lookup tables, also known as LUTs. Now, these are essentially filters that you can drag and drop onto your footage files, and they'll give them a certain look. For example, this is the Osiris M31 LUT. It's something that I personally used to use quite a lot, and it's incredibly popular throughout all of YouTube. But the issue with LUTs is that they're not particularly versatile or flexible. Once you drag and drop that thing on, you can't make too many subtle changes to the finer details. You can play around with the footage a little bit, but you're kind of stuck with that sort of start. So then, after playing around with those for a while, I moved into DaVinci Resolve. Now, DaVinci Resolve is a professional level color grading program. It's something that all of the Hollywood film studios use to color grade all of their footage, and that's something that I've been trying to learn probably over the past 6 months or so. Now, I feel like I should mention before I start that I'm not a professional colorist. This is all just information that I've picked up from experience and also from watching videos on the internet. Now, if you are a professional colorist and you see me do something that perhaps I could improve upon, or something that I should potentially avoid in the future, then please let me know down in the comment section. Your constructive criticism will be incredibly helpful because it will allow me to learn. But at this current point in time, this is how I grade all of my videos. This is how I get the style that I personally like. So, first up, we have got the preview of the clip. This is what the clip currently looks like. It's very grey because this was filmed in a log profile, which if you have a log profile in your camera, you should really be using it because it will give you more latitude to play with when you're actually grading. Then over here, we have got the node section. These are the layers of your color grade. We have the effects open, which we actually don't need at this point in time. We've got our scopes, which are very important. They allow you to see where your colors are sitting and how exposed your footage is. And then we have the color wheels and also things like curves down at the bottom right here. Now, for our first little node, the first thing that I tend to do is I tend to make this the saturation node. Now, this clip, I personally feel needs a lot of saturation, so I'm actually going to tune that right the way up to the 100, just so we can get as much color as we possibly can. Then the next thing I'm going to do is do an exposure node. So we're going to call this one exposure, and for that one we're going to head over to the lift, gamma, gain color wheels, and I'm going to drop this just a tiny bit so that we're right on the edge of clipping. We don't want to clip any of the black here. And then we're going to maybe pump up the gamma just a tiny bit as well. And then maybe a tiny bit extra gain as well. Nothing too serious, just because I quite like the way that this clip is exposed at this point in time. Maybe something like there. And if you want to do some extra checking, you want to see the exposure visualized in the clip, then I would suggest getting yourself the false color plugin, and then you'll be able to see where your clip is actually sitting. So we're kind of between around about 20 and 50 with some dark spots in the corners, which is kind of where I like to sit. I like the slightly low-key style in my videos. I think that just looks a little bit more cinematic. So those two are kind of the important ones. I would consider those as almost color correction. They're just getting the clip to a point where it looks alright. But now it's time to start adding in some stylistic bits and pieces. So the first thing that I'm going to do, some consider it to be a little bit cheesy, but I am going to do teal shadows. Now, the way that I used to do this is I used to go down to the log color wheels, so the log color wheels here, and I just used to pull the shadows towards teal, like that. And what that would do is it will really mess with your parades. That's the first thing that happens, but also it doesn't look right. It doesn't look good at all. So the way that you should do it is you should head down to this area here, and you should drag your LR down to probably about 0.02. And then we're going to drag our HR to around about 0.2, which means that we are only affecting between the very bottom, 0.02, almost 0, and up to around about here. These are the only colors that we're affecting with this color grade. And in fact, you know what? I might punch it up a little bit to about 0.242 or 0.25. And then what we can start doing is we can add some teal into the shadow. So if you just drag the mid-tone towards teal, you can see that that has made a little bit of a difference. You can see we've got some blue going on in some of the darker spots. But another thing that we can do is we can grab the mid-tone and we can also drag this down, and that will add some real depth into those areas. So you can see this is the before and this is the after. Already looking a lot more cinematic. After that, I'm going to create another node. This time it's going to be a parallel mixer node. I'm just going to be mixing in all of my stylistic ones just in a line going down like this, and then they'll be combined together with the parallel mixer. But we are going to change the label of this one, and this one is going to be the contrast one, and we're just going to dial in a tiny bit of contrast. To be honest, we've already made it pretty punchy by doing the deeper shadows, but I do really quite like the way that that looks. It's just a little bit more punch to the clip. I tend to like quite high contrast stuff. That's the way I like them. So for some of you this might be too much, but for me, yeah, that's looking pretty good. And then after that, I'm actually going to add a little bit of orange into our midtones, because this was like a nice summer day, and I want to get the feeling of like warmth coming through the footage. And right now, because of the teal shadows and things, it is looking a little bit on the cool side. So I'm just going to head over into my log color wheels once again, and we are going to select an area of, yeah, probably around about 0.25 up to maybe 0.6-ish. So this really is going to cover even some of the highlights, to be honest with you, and we're just going to push that more towards orange. Just a little bit over there. And if we full screen that, you can see that we have taken the blue and we've just put some orange into it. Yeah, funnily enough, that's exactly what we've done. And it's given it a completely different look. It's gone from looking like a kind of almost like a horror film to looking like a nice bright summer's day. And obviously all of these things need tweaking. I'm just messing around right here, but this is kind of the way that I would normally do it. For the time being, I think we're just about done in terms of stylistic things. A lot of clips that I edit will need some form of relighting, which I'll get onto at the end of the video. But for this one, I think things are looking pretty good. So now we're just going to do the final finishing touches. The first one is known as desat shadows. Now, what this will do is it will take some of the saturation out of these sorts of areas. So these really dark areas, they're looking a little bit blue. And shadows in real life, especially ones that dark, certainly don't look blue. So we're going to go along into the curves, and we're going to select this one here, so just one from the end, and we're going to desaturate the darkest points of our image. Now obviously you can do whatever you really want with this. If you want to go really extreme, then you can do something like that. But I'm just going to be working towards like the last 5%. And that will just take some of the darkness out of those shadows. I actually feel like I need a little bit more, maybe about there. So if we deactivate this thing, you can see now it's looking really blue, and then if we activate it, it's looking darker. It's looking pretty much black. All the saturation has been taken out, which just looks a lot more natural. Tiny, tiny little detail, but it makes all the difference. And then we're just going to add one last one, and this one is going to be sharpen. And we're just going to sharpen up the footage just a tiny bit. So we're just going to click on this one and then over to here and drag it down to about 0.47. I personally wouldn't go much lower than 0.47 or 0.46. Otherwise you get some crazy artifacts and noise going on. But if we deactivate this, you can see it's just a tiny bit more blurred. Activating it, we get a little bit more detail in that cover. Don't know how well YouTube compression is going to be showing that, but for me it works wonders. So I would say that just about wraps things up for this clip. If we just play it, you can see, yeah, there's no glaring issues. Everything's looking in order. It actually looks pretty good considering how fast and sloppy it was. It could probably do with some stabilization. That's very quick to do in DaVinci Resolve. So yeah, fairly happy with that one. Now this is, of course, a very straightforward clip. You can see we've only had to do saturation, exposure, some teal shadows, some contrast, some orange midtones, and then the desaturation and the sharpening. If we take a look at some clips from earlier on in the timeline, for example in the studio, I've had to do a bunch more things, and I'll quickly run you through it just in case you want to do a few more complicated, slightly more complex things in DaVinci Resolve. So the first thing that I wanted to do is I didn't like the look of my t-shirt. I thought that wasn't a particularly very nice color, so I decided to change it to teal. I personally prefer the look of the teal t-shirt. None of you noticed, by the way, in the comment section. And the way that I did that is just by opening up the curves and then going to hue versus hue and dialing that up. So you can see I can do whatever I want with this. Pink t-shirt, no problem. There it is. So I've got myself a teal blue t-shirt, and then I can dial up or down the saturation. I actually prefer it slightly less saturated than what I had it at. But then we've got the standard stuff, so saturation, exposure, that's the teal shadows right there. And then we've got the contrast, we saw that in the tutorial. But here we have a few that we didn't cover. So what I've done here is I've lit up this side of the room. So I thought that looked a little bit dark. It didn't look balanced with the other side of the room. So all I've done is I've got myself a masked off that area, and then increased the gamma, which is your mid-tone brightness, and it fixes it. So that looks a lot better. And the same thing goes for this light. I really didn't like the way this light looked. I thought it was just a little bit too bright and it looked unnatural, maybe slightly distracting. So I took some brightness out of it. I took the gamma down on it. And I also made it orange. And now it looks a lot more natural, far less distracting, and kind of fits in with the background. So there we go. I hope that you enjoyed this little whistle-stop tour of my color grading process. Obviously, it is very long-winded, and each clip is its own little project, so you're going to have to be patient, and you're going to have to play around with it, and there's a lot to learn. There seriously is a lot to learn, so this is just really scratching the surface, to be honest with you. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed it, I hope that you found it useful, and I'll catch you in the next video.